Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There it is, so you don't miss any of our football content this season. It has been, if I might say, fantastic. All right, I predicted last week the league would have a separation. Best quarterbacks would win week 6 going forward in most cases, and the best quarterbacks last week went 14-0. I went 3-1 on my picks. I had the Jets with the points, but the Bills winning. I just needed the Jets to make an occasional field goal. Is that too much to ask? The Action Network CCO, Chad Millman, my friend, all odds provided by DraftKings. I always feel like defensive players get hurt statistically more often than offensive players. That's where more of the violence is. Defenses get weaker over time. Quarterbacks pull away from the league. And once again, I think this is the second strongest week I think I've seen so far this year. So I'm excited about this. I think there's clear distinction in some of these games. And as you know, I don't have to like a team to like them for a week. I don't like the Jaguars, but I think the staff is fighting for its life. It's also number 5. You know I'm into number 5. I'm sorry. I know 7's the lucky number. 5 is mine. A team that regularly plays in London, a New England team that's limited, and actually Trevor Lawrence has not played poorly the last couple of weeks. If it's 5, I take the favorite last week, 4-5. The Packers was my favorite bet. The game was over 8 minutes in. Probably not sharp, but I love it.
I
Sharp
feel
or
like
square.
you're playing some kind of game of numerology and astrology and like I don't like bad quarterbacks. I like good quarterbacks. I like the number 5. I don't like the number 7. When the zodiac sign says Mercury is in retrograde, I'm definitely going with the team from Jacksonville if they're playing in London. Yes, this actually is the sharp side. And it's because the some of what you said, but it's also the Jags have been in London, favorites historically 35
Yeah.
and 10 in London. I mean, the just winning outright 35 and 10 in
Yeah.
London, something like 30 and 15 against the spread. It's like it's the right side. It's the nominally better team in a more desperate situation. So, yes, I mean, most wise guys are like, I'm not really planning on even watching this game. I'm going to sleep in. But if they're going to bet, they're going to bet the Jaguars. You just mentioned the Jets, and it made me think of a funny story because that game was so disgusting.
Well,
The night before
yeah.
the game, if you were betting the Giants at plus 3.5, was also terrible because they were winning. They had won that game. Like they were the better team. They had stymied Joe Burrow. They missed field goals. At the end of the game, it was clear they were going to lose because something funky was going to happen. The Bengals weren't just going to lay down at 10-7. They were going to do something that sort of kneecapped the Giants. I'm watching this game, and I feel like you'll appreciate this. It's 11 o'clock at night. I'm watching the game in bed. My wife is semi-sleeping next to me, and she says something to me, and I'm like, I can't understand what you're saying. What are you saying? And she starts talking to me about something that like has nothing to do with anything, that is a total non sequitur to the day, the weekend, everything. And I go, I can we just not talk about this right now? Like, we don't need to have this conversation this second. She goes, that's fine. I understand. My feeling right now is you're probably going to lose this game and you're going to wake up in the morning and people are on Twitter are just going to tell you you're stupid. And then she rolled over and she went back to bed.
That's
I
what they do,
know.
by the way.
I
She
felt
was
like you would
right.
appreciate every single element of that.
So that was one of my Blazing 5 picks. And for the first or second time in my career, I pulled it off the Blazing 5 when Malik
Yeah.
Neighbors was not available. I pulled it out. I almost inserted the Bears. My staff knew I loved that game. I didn't, so I finished 3-1. Here's my favorite pick of the week. And it again, I have a rule. When a good team plays a perfect game, and it's the game of the week, and it's flawless, pro or college, you don't duplicate that. We've seen that multiple times this year. Minnesota off a bye, Detroit off the perfect football game. No, thank you. I'll lay the points. Vikings now -1.5.
So it's
Sharp or square?
square. What's really interesting here is, and it's me and my co-host Simon Hunter talked about this on the favorites. He's a professional bettor, and a lot of times what professional bettors do they will manipulate the market. So this game was at Minnesota -1, -1.5 early in the week. It went
That's
up to
right.
2. It went up to 2.5. And then as soon as it got to 2.5, the professional bettors started betting Detroit again. It went back down to 2. It went back down to 1.5. So there's a philosophy, there's a theory right now that the professional bettors early in the week were betting small amounts of money to bet this game up a little bit so they could come in later in the week when the books take bigger dollar amounts and bet the Detroit Lions much, much heavier, right? The Lions, to me, are the right side. I think there's a difference between teams that are playing perfect games and teams that are fundamentally as close to perfect as you can get. And I like to bet looking inside out. I like to bet offensive line first. And the offensive line for the Detroit Lions is just dominant. They are. And I think the past few weeks, and we talked about this last week with the Lions and the Cowboys, they have figured out how to play physical, violent football. They have gotten out of the way of sort of trying to figure out, is Jared Goff going to win us the game? No. The offensive line is going to win us the game. Running the ball is going to win us the game. Jared Goff will then perform off of those situations that we have set up for him. So offensively, I think this is a much better team. And I do think Jared Goff and Ben Johnson will know how to scheme against Brian Flores, whose defense has been great. And the offensive line will protect against the pass rush that Flores has been great at generating. The worst unit on this field is going to be the Vikings offense. So if there is any diminished performance from the Lions because of Aiden Hutchinson, I do think it's somewhat mitigated by the fact they're not playing a lights out offense. And we're all looking to sell the Vikings. We're trying to figure it out, right? When are we going to sell the Vikings? A lot of wise guys think this is the week.
And now for the next segment, seeding the teams, brought to you by our friends at Scott's Lawn Care. Right now, the NFC seedings. How about Vikings, 49ers, Commanders, Lions, Falcons, Packers, Bucks? That feels about right. 12 weeks left. A lot can change, right? People get hurt. People elevate. Bet you didn't know the fall is the perfect time to feed and seed your lawn. Give your lawn a boost with Scott's Turf Builder and Winter Guard. Recover from the summer, prep for the winter. Put your grass on the road to recovery from damage caused by the summer heat. So feed your lawn Scott's Turf Builder Winter Guard this fall. Build strong, deep grass roots for a better lawn care. Repairs from summer fun. Secure your fall fun for you. Pick up a bag of Scott's Turf Builder Winter Guard today. Feed your lawn. Feed it. Okay, I on Monday on the Herd on FS1 and iHeartRadio, I said I'm taking the Rams at 5. The line will move up dramatically. It's the rare mistake by Vegas. McVay, Stafford off a bye. They're getting healthier. The Raiders made a true trade for getting rid of Devontae Adams, so it makes it even tastier. But I think Devontae Adams leaving sends a real message. The Max Crosby rumors don't help. They're saying he won't be traded, but it's not a great locker room right now. And the Raiders are not a team that needs to win because they're not going to. It's a distracted team with bad mojo. The Rams now need to go on a streak. They're healthier, better coach, better quarterback. In fact, it's the biggest coach-quarterback mismatch on the board this week. I have it at -5, sharp
If you
or
have it at
square.
5, that is incredible and it's sharp, and you should hold on to that like it's a cuddly teddy bear because that line does not exist.
Yeah.
Like it's at 6.5 in most places. So if you can get a 5, or if you have a 5, if you can book a 5, take the 5. At 6.5, it's not a number that I would want to really lean into for the Rams. The truth is, if at 6.5, I might even lean Raiders. I agree with you about Stafford and McVay. Nobody really trusts Aiden O'Connell, but the line bumped up for 2 reasons. One, expectation that Cooper Kupp might come back. They did think he could come back in week 7, and because the Raiders got blown out by the Steelers. But if you look at that box score, that game was close. It was 7-6 at the end of the first half.
Yeah.
It was 12-7 and then 3 consecutive series, fluky things happened to give the Steelers a huge lead. And even then, the Raiders had opportunities to come back and they were called back for penalties. They fumbled on the 1-yard line after they had scored a touchdown that was called back. So the game was closer than the score appears. So I think 6.5 is too much.
Seattle plus a field goal at Atlanta is interesting. The Seahawks are getting healthy. I know you have a luck rating, and the Saints were called unlucky. I do think Atlanta's had a few breaks go their way, and they're a tad overvalued. I think they win their division, but I actually think even the game against Tampa Bay that they won in overtime, I kind of felt most of the game Tampa was better and has a higher ceiling. I kind of like Seattle in this spot. They've been a funky mess defensively, and you think, well, they're not very good. No, they're finally getting their best defenders back. And Geno Smith, Atlanta has no pass rush. They have really good receivers. I like Seattle in the points, sharp or square.
At 2.5, the wise guys are playing the Falcons. At 3, they might play Seattle. They won't play Atlanta. They were kind of hoping it would get to 3.5, so they could play Atlanta. If they like Seattle, it's because of everything you just said. They're getting a little bit healthier. Atlanta can't generate a pass rush. The Falcons could just as easily be 0-6 right now, right? And we talked about this last week. The games they have won, 3 games that they won, they had a 5% chance to win those games, sometimes with less than 30 seconds left, and they still won those games. So there has been a lot of sort of luck involved in their season so far. So that is due. They are due for regression there. Even last week against the Panthers, like until Andy Dalton threw that pick into his territory, and then the Falcons went on an 84-yard drive, the Panthers were running all over them, and they had a chance to be very close in that game, if not win it outright. So this is a number play entirely. 2.5 Atlanta, 3 or more Seattle.
Okay, one of my favorite bets of the week, and it was before Davante Adams. I'll take the Jets minus 1.5. The Steelers are a mess. They don't even know who their quarterback is. I think the Jets are an excellent 2-4 team. If they could kick field goals, think about this. If it wasn't for Taylor Rapp making 2 remarkable plays at safety, jarring the ball loose, and if it wasn't for Teron Johnson making, honestly, an Ed Reed level interception, like one of the great plays of the year, Jets win that game. Aaron played well. They ran the ball. They had 72% motion, 25% with Nat Hackett the week before. I think the Jets are a really, really undervalued 2-4 team. They're high profile. The game is standalone. You think they're no good. They really should have beaten the Bills.
Totally
sharp.
Or
square.
They like it for everything you just said. The reason they really like it is because the indications are Russell Wilson will be the starting quarterback. And you can't find anybody who really understands the logic in that call unless it's just Mike Tomlin living up to a promise that he gave to Russell Wilson that he would be the starting quarterback. He really shouldn't be. And now you're getting Russell Wilson at a time where they've already lost their right guard, James Daniels, who was graded as the best guard in the NFL before his Achilles was injured. And then last week they lost Zach Frazier, who was graded as the 4th best center, according to Pro Football Focus, in the NFL, which is one of the reasons why their running game had been so powerful and they could get away with Justin Fields not being very good. So now you're getting rid of 2 of the best offensive linemen in the NFL. That is the strength of your team, and you're putting in a quarterback who's not nearly as mobile, yet he's going to have more pressure because the strength of the Jets defense is the interior of their defensive line. So forget about Aaron Rodgers, forget about Davante Adams. The reason why professional bettors are leaning the Jets is because of those interior factors. And again, those are the things that don't get as discussed in sort of the larger platforms, but that's what the bettors are looking at. It's what's happening at the center of the Steelers line and who the quarterback is going to be, much more than Davante Adams. And you've seen this number go up, even though the majority of the bets have actually come in on the Steelers, but the money, the professionals, have come in on the Jets.
If you're ever injured, check out Morgan & Morgan. It's America's largest injury law firm, and they are there for you. Over 100 offices nationwide. Think about that. More than 1,000 lawyers with over $20 billion, that's a B, $20 billion recovered for over 500,000 clients. Things happen in life unexpectedly. Submitting an injury claim with Morgan & Morgan is really, really easy. Like winning in the NFL is hard. We know that quarterbacking in the NFL is hard. Submitting a claim is easy. You're ever injured? Check out Morgan & Morgan. Their fee is free. unless they win. For more information, go to forthepeople.com/Colin or dial pound law from your cell phone. Morgan & Morgan has a proven track record of fighting for you to get a full and fair compensation if there's an unexpected accident in your life. And I've had a few. So I never bet against Lamar Jackson in the NFC, but at 3.5 points, I do like Tampa at home. I think Tampa may be the most underrated team in the league. I mean, Baker Mayfield, he'll give you a little wiggle. 14 of his 15 touchdowns from the pocket. He and Chris Godwin are humming. They have a 3-pronged run game. Tucker, Bucky Irving, White, like 3 legitimate running backs. And that is a team that even in games they've lost, you look up and think, oh, this is probably the better team. If I get the hook, I'm taking Tampa here. Also, Ravens have been in back-to-back very emotional games. I think, they always beat the NFC, but sharp or square, I'd go the hook in
100%
Tampa.
sharp. And this line opened at 4.5. What's really interesting is you talked about sort of the performance of the public last week by saying betting on the better quarterback, right? Last week, the public went 10-3-1. The public in the 5 weeks prior had the worst start to the season it had ever had. And just for clarity, when I talk about the public, I mean amateur bettors who tend to bet favorites and tend to bet the favorites to cover, right? So you're talking about teams like the Ravens or the Chiefs or, in this case, last week, the Lions. Normally, the public does not win. So the public is all over the Ravens this week. And when that happens, bookmakers, when the public really cashes in, bookmakers know amateur bettors are fat and happy. They're going to take the money they won the week before. They're going to go to the sports book. They're going to bet the favorites again because, hey, I just won. How hard can this be? I just won betting the Ravens to win by a touchdown against the Commanders, and they did it. So now they're going to come back, and you can see, like, the Bucs game, it opened at 4.5. It immediately got that down to 3.5. That's because the wise guys came in on the Bucs, and they still like the Bucs. Baker's the key here. What Baker can do, throwing across the middle to Godwin and Mike Evans, hopefully, because he did have a little bit of a soft tissue injury, and so there is some concern he might not play. But assuming he will, what Baker can do across the field, middle of the field, against a coverage unit in the Ravens that is bottom third in the league and a pass defense that is giving up the second most passing yards per game in the NFL. The only team worse is the Jaguars. This is a recipe for Baker to keep this game close. Or, Colin, it's a recipe for Baker to break our heart with an interception when the team is down by 10 and we need him to score a touchdown to cover the backdoor. Yeah.
Yeah, he's done both. There's always a game I feel mildly interested, but I want your conviction and your insight. The only time the Texans have really played awful this year was when they traveled north and faced Minnesota, and it was a lot of Brian Flores and CJ Stroud acknowledging, I don't even know what I saw. I like Green Bay. I've never loved their defense. Texans getting 3. I've got Joe Mixon back, a run component. I want your opinion on this. Like, it's telling me to bet Texans, but I think Jordan Love is such a special player. But D'Amico Ryans could do a Brian Flores to Jordan Love like Flores did to CJ Stroud. Tell me the Texans is the right side.
It's not. This is one of those number plays. There's plenty of places where you can get the Packers at -2.5, and the wise guys are betting the Packers at 2.5. And what really tells you the wise guys are betting the Packers at 2.5 is the way the money is split. Again, public is all over the Texans. You can see that the money is coming in on the Packers, and that's what's fascinating here. So it's a really hard game, and there's been a huge debate in the professional betting community about which is the right side. But if you're getting the Packers at 2.5, people want to make that bet. The professionals want to make that bet.
What's the game I'm missing? It's usually egregiously uncomfortable to watch. It's a corner TV game.
Well,
What is
I'm
it?
a little surprised we didn't talk about the Chiefs and the Niners at all.
Well, I will not bet against Andy Reid off a bye. My heart tells me the Niners are eventually going to win one of these games. Brock Purdy is actually today playing better than Mahomes. So my gut is the Niners are the side. But betting against Andy Reid off a bye is like these days betting against Ohtani with men on base.
Yeah,
I'm
and
not
not only that,
interested.
betting against Patrick Mahomes as an underdog.
I mean,
Yeah,
he's like
it's
10 and
it's
3 or
it's
something.
ridiculous. So I'm glad because the answer would be there is no answer. And it's what you just said. It's a heart and a head game. In your head, it's like the Super Bowl last year. In your head, the Niners have the better roster. The Niners should win this game outright. But Patrick Mahomes, like you make your own luck, right? Even this year, they've been lucky in so many spots. And you have to say to yourself, of course, this is going to end. It can't continue to be this way. But it's Patrick Mahomes who finds a way to get out of the pocket, find Travis Kelce in his zone when Travis Kelce hasn't caught two passes the entire game. All of a sudden, the last drive, they need a field goal. They're driving down the field. They get the field goal. Quirky things happen. So it's a really hard game. Like people don't want to really invest in this game.
So are you saying the wise guys like Kansas City plus 1.5 against San
Completely
Francisco?
split. It is like you have the guys who are just like you who refuse to bet against Patrick Mahomes. In fact, they would rather take their shot and bet on Patrick Mahomes. They don't want to be watching the end of the game and seeing Patrick Mahomes have the ball
Right.
and know they should have bet on him and have not bet on him. But what's been interesting is the Chiefs are a very public road underdog. That is not a great situation to be on the side of if you're a professional, if you're a bettor, right? You want to be against the public in most situations. This number has been kind of staying at 1.5, which tells you that the wise guys have been coming in on the Niners. So if they're closing their eyes, looking at rosters, looking at data, they're betting the Niners. If they're eyes wide open, seeing who's on the field, they're betting the Chiefs. I mean, I I almost like I'm sick to my stomach telling you this, but the wise guys are all over the Browns at now plus, yeah,
The
plus
Browns?
5.5 against the Bengals. And I know, I know.
Oh, oh, gross. I mean, they just traded
Well,
Amari
look, so what happened
Cooper.
was this line was at 5.5, and the wise guys were already trending towards the Browns.
Now this is at Cleveland, getting 5.5 against
Yes.
Cincinnati and
And
Burrow.
so when Amari Cooper was traded Tuesday afternoon, this line immediately shot up to 6.5. Do you know who's not worth a point against the point spread? Amari Cooper. Do you know who else isn't worth a point against the point spread? Aiden Hutchinson. There is nobody in the NFL who is worth a point against this point spread unless it's a quarterback. Anyone else is a half a point. That's it. Amari Cooper, the Browns should get points back for trading Amari Cooper. That's how the wise guys look at this. So they bought the Browns at 6.5. They bought the Browns again at 6. It's back down to 5.5. There's a lot of stuff that they like about betting the Browns. The Browns have not had an offensive line that was healthy this entire year. This weekend, they should be getting Jack Conklin back. That's huge for their offensive line. Nick Chubb should be back. I'm not saying Nick Chubb makes them a much more superior team, but it does give them an opportunity to start playing a little bit more like Kevin Stefanski wants to play these games and take the ball out of Deshaun Watson's hands. At the very least, maybe Deshaun Watson won't be staring at the pass rush because he won't be so afraid because Jack Conklin is playing again. So I do like that that is happening. There's some good health things on the offensive side of the ball, and their defense is getting healthier too. And you got a top 5 pass rush defense. You got Myles Garrett in a divisional game in this situation with a Bengals team that still isn't that good. They shouldn't
Right.
be a 5.5 point favorite. It's terrible. You don't want to bet the bad quarterback against one of the best quarterbacks. I'm not asking you to do it. I'm just telling you what the professionals are doing.
Chad Millman, Sharper Square, CCO Action Network, all odds provided by DraftKings. As always,
Great
my
to see you,
friend, thank
buddy.
you.